keep on going forward. Life's beautiful, world is beautiful, there are beautiful things.
Was that Henrik? Or was that the movie talking via Henrik? He was right, you know. She chose the wrong gaming console for her apartment. She is losing grasp of who she is. Traitor. Traitor.
Spoken like a real Dreamcast fan.
Absolutely. Or taken the time was this film, it should have been Sega Saturn all the way. Welcome to the Flick Lab. I'm Karri Ojala, your host of the night. My co-host is Henrik Telkki. Henrik Telkki studies to be a Master of Arts. Someday, I hear. Me, myself, and I am media assistant. So we have some grasp of the art of film.
The magic word being some.
Some.
Yeah, in reality, film analysis, film studies, art studies, everything between, it's a never-ending journey. You are never actually finished with it.
It is. We can't be perfect in everything, but we're quite close to it. So today, we have Satoshi Kon's 2 movies coming here. Henrik's recommendations for this episode. We'll have Perfect Blue, and we also have Millennium Actress, the following film. We're talking about anime in this episode. It's been quite a while. We've done Akira and a bunch of others, but Satoshi Kon, his first film was Perfect Blue from 1997, followed by Millennium Actress 2001, also Tokyo Godfathers 2003 and Paprika 2006. Something that is very familiar for this director, something that he wants to delve in, is the themes of duality and dreamscapes and a reality getting meshed with a dreamlike world, or several storylines embedding into one.
Yeah, the personal identity and kind of a shifting aspects of one's identity and the whole concept of what is real and shifting realities, they are, I would say, the most kind of a staple things in Satoshi Kon's filmography. They are to more or less to an extent in all of his films. They are also a major feature in Paranoia Agent, the one anime series that he also directed.
Which might be the one that takes the biggest leap as far as the storyline machines go. If you're into this kind of stuff, definitely check it out as well, dear listener. So, something that we have specifically today in his films is the duality of fandom, as you put it, or two-faced fan. Maybe as a second point of interest, at least for you, it would be the production machinery / capitalism and their connection to the artist and the description of fan culture. And in fact, Satoshi Kon, he has gone on record to say that these 2 films are a different side of the same coin. Interestingly, there are some themes that do indeed reoccur in these films.
They are, and well, this being the Flick Lab, it's kind of a cheap shotting here, really, to point this one out and kind of make it a point of the episode, because in Shadows, because in these 2 films, Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress, it is kind of in your face, like the similarities between the 2 films. And especially the similarities when it comes to or the point that they are 2 sides of the fan coin. It's kind of obvious, so we can't score really any kind of a deep ridden we really cracked the case this time points for us.
There are some novels behind these films. For Perfect Blue, there is the novel Perfect Blue Complete Metamorphosis by Yoshikazu Takeuchi. Similarly, there is a novel for Paprika or Paprika, written by Yasutaka Tsutsui. We will not touch on that film right in this episode, but Hopefully we will come back and do the part 2 of Satoshi Kon's works and delve deeper into Satoshi Kon, the man himself. Today it's just gonna be more on the surface. Also, Three Godfathers is a book behind the Tokyo Godfathers film written by Peter B. Kine, which is a particularly short 37 pages. And indeed, for tonight's films, when it comes to The Perfect Blue, it's about a little over 100 pages, so it's a really a blast to read, and I can highly recommend it. Actually, it is really a pulse-racing horror novel, really, which doesn't have this dreamy escape and this hallucinations and delusions like we have in the film. That is something that Satoshi Kon wanted to have something different in this film compared to the book, the novel, and the writer agreed for these changes as long as they would retain some core elements from the novel.
Yeah, I have to confess right at the beginning, I haven't read the original source novel for Perfect Blue. I do know that it exists. I do know that there is an English translation. I also do know that following Perfect Blue, the Perfect Metamorphosis, the author has continued on this, well, let's just say Perfect Blue universe, where he has tackled and done more kind of a psychological and horror stories involving the idol culture of Japan. And there exists at least one short story collection, which is kind of a sister piece or later indirect sequel, but keeping with the theme of Perfect Morphosis that he has written. That too I also haven't read. But I am aware of, at least partly, on the backgrounds of the film, and I am aware that Satoshi Kon took some really heavy liberties when it came to translating the original novel to a film. And apparently this, or at least as far as I've understood, this was kind of getting these altruistic liberties as a director. That was kind of a linchpin for Satoshi Kon, for him to agree to even make the movie. Like, he wasn't super interested in making the movie when it was first pitched to him that you could direct a film adaptation from this novel, but later on he kind of changed his mind, and he was willing to do it as long as he would have pretty libertine liberties when it came to the adaptation, and had the author kind of stick to his grounds and go on very heavily on the direction. No, this is my body of work. You cannot alter it. You can't really change it. In that case, most likely Satoshi Kon would have refused to make the film altogether.
And it's quite a lot to be asked, I'm sure, because this is, as stated, his first feature film. And when it comes to the writer, somehow it doesn't surprise me that he has continued to do books related to kind of a pop idol or fandom, because in his afterword in the book of 91, he does say that, as it happens, I'm pop idol superfan, though not twisted and obsessive, of course.
That also would be something that really twisted and obsessive superfan of a pop idol would most definitely say.
Right. It was good to hear in his later afterword from 98 as well, quote, I was deeply impressed by the beautiful, high-quality animation projected on the big screen of the Shibuya Pantheon Theater, and the delight at seeing my own work nurtured and transformed into something so splendid brought tears to my eyes, end quote. But we can talk about the differences between the book and the film. If you don't want any spoilers regarding the book, maybe you want to skip ahead. Henrik, do you want any spoilers?
Well, this is the Free Club. Like, the spoiler warnings should be... we should just rename the whole podcast as Spoiler Warning, the podcast. You most definitely, if you don't wanna be spoiled for the novel or especially for the films, I cannot recommend highly enough that you stop listening right this minute because following the next recording session that we are now starting, that following what it will take, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours, most likely will be heavily spoiled.
Absolutely. We have done over 120 episodes, and unfortunately, we never mentioned that there would be heavy spoilers ahead, but we can state it out now that, in case you didn't know, this is Spoilers the Podcast. Indeed, a podcast that could have been named aptly as The Autopsy. But in the book, there are several pages that spend time on this so-called fan muttering and thinking to himself that he must gonna preserve that smile of the character, preserve what she was when she started her career as a pop idol. The book only keeps the character as a pop idol. She never comes into a movie star. But there are differences in the representation of her pop idol life. And essentially, he tries to keep her innocent like and unchanged forever, so he doesn't allow her to develop as a human beyond her 20s or something like this, kind of like a virgin appearance. In the book, a fellow rival idol, Eri, is jealous of Mima and sends a reporter to stalk her. And there are no delusions, as mentioned. It's all happening for real. It's quite straightforward. It's easy to see how Satoshi Kon would have maybe not been too enthusiastic in translating into this film as the novel, because maybe location-wise, maybe some theme-wise, it would have been just a little bit too dull, because it's all in the wording and the richness of the vocabulary and the sentences that the characters use, which would have been thrown out the window where this been completely adapted to the screen as is. So it would have been just another slasher horror film, I suppose.
Yeah, and in return, the film that eventually was made, Perfect Blue, it is, well, almost nothing but hallucinations and kind of this really jumbled narrative where it's hard to say at the end when does one scene end and when does the next one begin, what is real and what is a dream or some kind of a hallucinatory state of the main character. This also being something that well, since we are also tackling Millennium Actress, is a big part of that film also. The narrative kind of constantly shifting. In Perfect Blue, it shifts from scene to scene. Like you have a horrible murder and harsh cut to film set where the shooting is happening, and in Millennium Actress you have these really harsh cuts from different genre of film.
Yeah. Before we go fully to Dance with the Rabbit, we could talk a little bit about Satoshi Kon as a little primer for the future. This is Primer, the episode for Satoshi Kon. Dreaming Machine is one film that unfortunately Satoshi Kon was not able to complete. It was less than halfway in the production and was supposed to be Kon's next project. It went into development hell since Kon's death. Dreaming Machine, it's unsure if this will ever be made, because the people around the project, they want to find a director who would have the same skills to an extent as Satoshi Kon, or the same kind of a way of structuring the film, so good luck with that. Search of the director continues. Satoshi Kon unfortunately left this world in 2010. So once again, Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress. As you stated, yes, there are recurring themes, duality, I would say even some open schism towards the modern entertainment industry, the loss of self or purpose, overlapping storylines, as pointed out by some of the crew, kind of a stereogram story. Main character is psychologically tortured by something. What is the perfect blue, Henrik?
Perfect Blue, essentially, and now we get into the heavy spoiler territory for the films. It tells a story of a young pop idol from a mediocre liked pop pop trio, Charm, who wants to transition from pop industry to film industry and become a real actress. And upon doing that transitioning and leaving Charm, our main heroine all of a sudden finds herself in this kind of a hellscape where there all of a sudden is a web page on her name claiming to be her diary, which has some really intimate revelations about her life, some which are true, some which are completely fictional. There also appears to be a mysterious stalker who apparently wants to harm her. There are a string of murders or two murders that happen in relation to the film project that she has been tied with called Double Bind. And as the situation continues to progress, our main heroine starts to kind of lose her grip with reality, starts to question who she really is, starts to hallucinate her pop idol self as an antagonist entity kind of looming over her. And all of that kind of in the end culminates into a mediocre plot twist about what really is going on and who is behind all of this. At the end of its line, at least in my opinion, Perfect Blue is not so much about the mystery of the mystery story, in the sense of who is behind all of this and why and how, and it's more just about that kind of a personal journey that the main character takes in order to both to shed her previous identity, her previous kind of a skin, that persona of the pop idol, and to transition into the persona of the film actress. And in the progress of doing so, she kind of redefines, and properly so this time, who she really is.
Interesting that you chose the word skin. The original book is delving around the subject of skin, but quite literally, as you can imagine. There's also a sentence in the original novel, if you want to talk about what is the perfect blue of the perfect blue. Quote, usually she felt excited before recording a song, but instead she felt blue, unquote. Of course, this could be completely, maybe has nothing to do with the title itself. And as you see in the film, at least, there are different colorscapes where different events take place. There's something that takes place in the blue scheme of the film. There's something that follows in the red landscape of the film. There's also even the green scape of the film, which left me a little bit wondering what that green might actually be. Of course, people love to have colorful theories about it. No pun intended.
Yeah, the green is kind of a mystery. The blue and red color theme is the most obvious one that you quite easily pick when you look at the film. And I would say when it comes to the three colors of the film, red, blue, green, red and blue are the ones that are, well, since they are the most prominent colors, or they are the most prominent color theming device of the movie, they are the most, I would say they are the most easiest to kind of approach and start to, at least to a point, start to decipher what they could mean in the movie. The green is something that kind of just constantly keeps escaping you. You keep noticing it, but whenever you kind of would want to the green color to stop and stay still for just a moment, so that you could start to decipher what the green is really meaning. There just isn't enough green in the film. It's more prominently it's red and blue movie.
You know, I've been thinking a little bit about the how I have approached in my life the fandom, or what kind of fan I have been. I think everybody is, to an extent, some kind of a fan of something. Maybe not as psychotic as seen here, I hope. But, you know, even being an interviewer gives you a handy excuse to get closer to famous people, at least when you're talking about famous people in the Finnish scheme of things. I remember, going all the way back to the same old nonsense. When we were kids, Henrik, we loved to go to the game world or go to places to do some interviews for our tiny little website. And, just by the virtue of having that microphone, just by the virtue of having that video camera, you could say that, hey, I'm here to interview you, even though I sometimes didn't even have any questions prepared, which was kind of making things awkward for everybody. But there was that it's easier to approach people, and just by that excuse you get so close to these people and get to ask all the stupid questions you want. And I found that kind of great and fascinating.
There is also a kind of a power dynamic that is at play in the interview situations. Like when you are, if you bring a camera into a situation and you present the situation as an interview, what you are also doing, you are kind of proposing a demand for that person's time.
Yeah.
I have a camera here. The camera means that I am an interviewing viewer. And what I'm now trying to do is an interview. You are the one being viewed. So you kind of have to give your time to me for this interview. There is kind of nobody ever words this out, but the kind of a whole notion of bringing camera into a place and starting an interview process, there is that aspect that you should stop for this moment now and commit your time to me. There is also another factor that kind of plays in the background of interviews, is the element that the one committing the interview or doing the interviewing has a certain amount of social power in that situation. He or she can have the list of questions that are going to be the framework for the interview. And sometimes the ones being interviewed, they demand to see that list of questions, but that's kind of that's not really a typical situation. Usually you can keep that list of questions to yourself as a kind of a secret. You only know what the questions are going to be until you propose the questions to the person you are interviewing. And those questions can actually range from everything to anything. They can be extremely business related, like they were when we were doing the interviews for our webpage. And they can be very analytical or centering around the business. Like we interviewed a lot about, well, how is this game franchise going forward? How does this NHL game differ from the previous one? These are industry questions. But in the same way, we could have gone to much more personal direction. This is something that we haven't really ever truly hardly done. But for example, when we have now been committing interviews around, well, essentially this podcast, our questions, or at least some of them have been more personal than were the questions that we proposed to our well, quote unquote victims back in the Vitonen days when we stayed strictly on the industry side.
Yeah, and there is a kind of a theme of voyeurism when you bring the video camera to a space. You have the power to capture everything, and whatever is captured will be in the can forever, and there's nothing you can do about it. And in that aspect as well, I understand that, well, in many situations, the person might not even know who you are and what you're going to do with the material, whether it's nefarious, whether it's good, whether it's advancing someone's career, whether it's giving them more exposure or not, or whether it's worth of my time actually to spend 30 minutes talking about games or not. And I understand completely that some people want these questions beforehand. There's always the risk that you will make somebody look ridiculous. And I remember back in even our webpage days that you really have to start to consider what you're going to leave in, what you're going to leave out, because even if the person, well, it's always a heat of the moment situation when you're interviewing anyone, and if kind of everything is on the table, if it's just a kind of a free-flowing situation, then you have to use your thinking, what you really want to stay out there for people to see about this person. And you have to make those decisions. That was, as a kid, kind of a teaching moment that you have to make these adult decisions now. You can just portray this person in any shit way that it might look like.
Yeah, there is an element of trust that the one being interviewed has to kind of a place upon you. Like well, back in Vitonen, we interviewed, for example, Thomas Puha, who at least used to be a major player when it came to Finnish video game journalism.
Yeah.
And kind of a well, in terms of Finnish video game journalism, he was kind of a celebrity. He was kind of an idol.
Yeah.
At least to us, and I would say to quite a lot of young kids who played video games in Finland back in the day. So of course, there were stakes for him whenever he agreed to be interviewed. He kind of put his trust on us that we, for example, won't edit the footage that we shoot in a way that would cast him in a wrong light. We wouldn't mess with the material so that we would hint that he is saying something that he wasn't originally saying. That's something that he had no guarantees that this wouldn't happen, or we wouldn't do this. It was just he just had to trust us, and we kind of had to be worthy of that trust and be responsible in that situation. And at the same time, unfortunately, when it comes to interviews, this is something that I've kind of picked up more watching documentaries, but it also applies into interviews, is the fact that usually your target, that the material you are gonna get, when it comes to, the selfish, how good documentary or an article I can squeeze out of it, this one. It kind of depends on exactly in how bad shape you can actually capture your target when you are doing the interview. Like especially once again, especially in documentary films, it is kind of a rule of thumb, a rule of law in documentary filmmaking that your your documentary is going to be better if you can capture some kind of a bad side from your target. If you are making a pop culture documentary about, well, let's say about Madonna, the pop artist, and your documentary film is gonna be better. It's gonna be more groundbreaking if you can somehow showcase that Madonna is a shitty personality, or you can somehow dig deep into a personal trauma or you can find a new side of Madonna, usually a negative side, because that's the ones that gets talked about. This also is something that works, for example, in nature or business documentaries like Blackfish, the whale documentary that broke all the grounds and was in the headlines few years ago. That essentially did nothing except painted SeaWorld in a negative light. But that's kind of what it takes to make a good documentary film. It also largely benefits your interview or the article that you are going to make based on your interview. And that's something like I have and am doing some freelance reporting to pay the bills and pay the rent. And this is also something that has shown up in my work in newspaper reporting, that I also have to kind of take this into a consideration. And when I go to interviews a person, I kind of have to be responsible here and kind of a fight against my better nature. Like there is, I would say, like it's no surprise that I am a shitty person. So of course I also carry with me this element that at times I really would like to find the scoop when I go and do an interview. I would really like to hit the nail in the head, so to speak. And I kind of have to like keep myself from doing that, because that would be dishonest and it would be disrespectful, and you shouldn't cross that boundary.
And especially when it comes to documentaries, when we're talking about the art of film in general, it's an act of manipulation every time to make that movie magic, to make it look like a movie. One shot follows another shot to make a story. It's no different actually in documentaries. And there happens a lot of manipulation. Sometimes it is conscious, sometimes it's completely unconscious. And therein lies the problem for me regarding documentaries. You might have a person that you're going to interview, then it's going to shift into the next shot of, well, let's say a whale. But the whale that they were discussing about wasn't exactly that whale, so they used the wrong footage, maybe it was from the wrong year, had nothing to do with the country they were talking about, and that could have been an accident, that could have been on purpose, we didn't have the stock material. The amount of manipulation you can do there and send the wrong message, they are so infinite that in general, to be honest, I don't really watch documentaries for this reason.
Yeah, I unfortunately can't share your high ground here, because I'm on the flip side. I'm actually one of the douchebags making documentaries. So
Something that might touch a little bit closer as far as fandom regarding this film. Well, I could talk about the extremely toxic fan culture that I've seen quite close regarding the American hard rock band Guns N' Roses. I jumped into this fandom in 2004, when the original band was no more. So I didn't have this baggage of associating the band with the old members, how it was seen by most of the popular culture. So I let the music do the talking and just go from there. And there was a kind of a big shift to more industrial and more experimental with the new band, which had this kind of new identity, obviously. And there were these discerning voices trying to dictate the external appearance of the band, like saying the lead singer Axl Rose is fat, too fat, and is out of breath, or which actually was often true. But fat, not rock and roll enough, looks like a group of clowns, yada yada yada. It's not the same anymore after most of the original band members left. Of course it's not. But it doesn't mean it would have to be a worse experience either. But the amount of scorn the new players of the band had received, it's too much. It even got to the point where the bassist of the band would, in frustration, say quotes like "get on board" or "fuck off," referring to the fact that you're either with us with what we're doing or you're against us, and we don't care about that. So you can't dictate what the band is about. But when the new band members were cast aside in this way, were cast aside in favor of the reunion of some of the old band members, that felt manufactured to me, no matter how well they now were able to get along. And they even enjoyed the heck out of playing together now. But the transition, it didn't feel fair for the band members that were there in the interim period. So, at least personally, I lost interest with the band, ironically, at that point, when Slash and Duff McKagan came back.
But even though, speaking of Guns N' Roses, even though you weren't there to take part, or you weren't there to have all the package in order to take part in the whole appearance backlash. If I would say you were there on a prime time, if you wanted to take part on the fan backlash against the many postponings of the album Chinese Democracy, which I also kind of noticed that was also something tied to Guns N' Roses, where the fan backlash or the fan reaction kind of got out of hand.
Yeah.
I never was a major Guns N' Roses fan, so I didn't really follow the Chinese Democracy album and the process of bringing that album out. But I do remember that there was a time when internet had a whole bunch of these torture games where you had like 2D figure of Axl Roses and you could kind of chop off his limbs or hit him in the face or something like this. So like commit acts of torture against the digitalized 2D version of Axl Rose.
Yeah.
And these were framed like you can punish Axl for Chinese Democracy not coming out.
It's quite sick, actually, this feeling of entitlement that no matter how long it's gonna take and no matter how long it did take, this feeling of entitlement from the so-called fans, it's quite disgusting. In fact, Axl Rose kind of has responded in a way to this, saying, quote, "the internet is a huge garbage can."
And it is. Like Axl Rose is absolutely correct on that. And I kind of even feel that internet has just gotten worse as time has gone by. Like we are getting even more and more kind of extreme and aggressive.
Yeah, it's not even about the anti-intellectualism. It's just, you could say outright, the level of stupidity and the amount of IQ points lost when you open the internet nowadays. It's disturbing.
But that, unfortunately, like that feeling of entitlement that the fans or some of the fans, like let's be absolutely clear here. Even though we are going to talk about fans in plural throughout the episode, most likely we don't mean fans as in all fans. Majority of the fans, as far as at least I've understood, are pretty well behaved, pretty okay people. But and the examples that we have been talking about, most likely we'll be talking about the examples touched upon by Perfect Blue. Those are kind of the marginal fans. We are talking about perhaps something like from 1 to 5% of the fan base.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, let's like that perhaps is important to get out of the way before these discussions go any further. Just so that everybody knows that we are not hinting that the fan base itself, like the fans at large, are some kind of a beasts. That's not the case here. We are talking about the marginal group that unfortunately exist inside the fandoms. But once again, we would kind of make the whole discussion too hard to have and too complicated to follow. If we would in every single argument we would just stop to pinpoint that we are now talking about that this 1 to 5% of fans.
Yeah.
So
sure.
we are generalizing here somewhat, but when it comes to fans, you mentioned the whole theme of entitlement from the fans' side, and that unfortunately that is something that appears to be very heavily tied into, well, you being an idol, you being a celebrity. It's not just a case for Guns N' Roses. It's not just case for J-pop. It's not just case for the main heroine of Perfect Blue. It's something that kind of constantly seem to happen whenever you have a major celebrity. It has happened with for example, American pop stars like Miley Cyrus, or larger pop groups like Backstreet Boys or Spice Girls, where there has been this kind of a perceived notion that you get the image about the target of your fandomism, your idol, and he or she appears to you in some light.
Sometimes this fandom, of course, gets into the spheres of to the murky end of the death of John Lennon, and there are many other cases similar to that. Dimebag Darrell from Pantera, he was killed by a fan, or for example, Rebecca Schaeffer, a 21-year-old actress, shot in front of her porch.
Yeah. And even when it doesn't go into these extreme lengths, like committing actual murders for even then, there is this really controlling aspect when it comes to fandoms. Like you made the brought up the notion that with Guns N' Roses and with Axl Rose, the fans started to dictate who were the real band members and who should be allowed to stay in the band or appear as members of Guns N' Roses, and also dictate the appearance of Axl Rose. The fat comments that you brought up. And Axl Rose really isn't the only one who has to go through this treatment. It's, I would say, almost all the superstars, especially the female ones who really get to hear about have they been putting up weight, or does this outlook now make the idol look like a slut? Is she whoring herself out there? This was I remember that this was the major crux of the Miley Cyrus backlash.
There's some of that slut whore type of discussion in the book of Perfect Blue, and in the film as well as in the book and Millennium Actress, there is a bit of that terrorizing of the female, and we get the kind of a woman's perspective, albeit mainly produced by males, I believe. There are a couple of cliches, characterization cliches, that I would like to bring to the board. The me-mania, the creep, the depiction of a killer as a less than handsome, this drooling weirdo cliche. In Tokyo Godfathers, it's this transsexual character who is not per se bad, but is viewed as bad or is slurred. In Paprika, it's the fat man. And actually, in Perfect Blue, it's the roomie is the fat girl.
Yep. I was since you mentioned the cliches, I started to wait. When does Rumi show up? Because that, well, spoiler warnings have already been given. The major plot twist, the big one in Perfect Blue is that the main culprit behind the Perfect Blue's main character's Mima's hardships has, throughout the film, been her manager from the charm days, who still is with her Rumi, who has this kind of a changing and shifting weight problem as the film goes on. Throughout the film, she is constantly being portrayed visually as a well, not as fit as the idols, not as fit as Mima. She's kind of a chubby, but especially towards the end, especially after the final plot twist has happened, and you get to see that Rumi is behind well, essentially everything that has happened. She has been controlling and manipulating the creepy fan, and she's the one who behind the murders, and most likely also behind the letter bomb and the threatening faxes, and basically everything that Mima has to go through. That's all Rumi is doing. And once that revelation happens, you kind of notice that Rumi all of a sudden becomes even fatter, and she is constantly being kind of there's a whole chase scene that happens at the very end of the film, and there you are, Rumi is being contrasted against the hallucination of Pop Mima, and you have these double images, like the pop, the sling fit pop idol Mima is running on the street chasing our main hero in the real Mima, and at the same time you get a glimpse on some kind of a mirror, a window, and there you see Rumi, the real person chasing her, and she's this really swollen, ugly, fat, almost of a mass of a person who is sweating and snarking her teeth and all of that. So
Yeah.
you have most definitely, when it comes to Perfect Blue, you have that visual presentation of kind of a cliche evil and cliche ugliness. The Stalker's fan is almost disfigured and has a really bad teeth, and
Mm.
Rumi, as disclosed, is overweight, especially during that final chase scene.
Yeah, and touching a little bit on the Tokyo Godfathers, I felt that the the gay slurs were particularly not needed. I didn't understand why they had to do it and why they had to kind of victimize this transsexual character. Muri has taken this avatar character as part of her split personality, kind of the perfect image, the Mima that she sees, or weirdly actually it shouldn't be all that she sees. If she is indeed her manager, she should know that she is also a private real person, not just the avatar person on the stage. But what do you know? What happens with split personality brain when you take on the different character? I think this is kind of nicely adapted from the novel, where you have parts where it's stated that Muri wanted to be a pop idol before, and this would kind of explain her psychotic behavior in the film in a way. I don't think it's mentioned in the film.
No, there's no mention of that. There really is not that much background to her character altogether in the film, to a point where it's kind of even hard to say what it exactly is supposed to be that she's supposed to be to these girls, to what she's supposed to be to Mima.
And rolling all the way back to our interview talk, there's also something when you get to personally discuss kind of everything with your sort of idols or public persons, that image of them being some kind of a unreachable or godlike figures that fortunately crumbles down, and you start to see these people as real human beings. And actually, I'm not sure how many people in general kind of get to have this kind of outlook. Maybe it has helped a lot now, because in the last 20 years internet has boomed and everybody's a goddamn celebrity, and we get to so close to people, even the kind of the really high celebrities, that perhaps people are not as obsessed as they were in the VCR times, maybe. But yeah, what do you make of that?
I don't know. I would like to say that we may be even more obsessed these days, but most likely that's not the case. But I kind of don't believe that the level of obsession has really decreased on our time. It may have shifted a bit, but when watching Perfect Blue, the big question that came to my mind was the parasocial relationships that we have with other people, those who we kind of see as somehow being public figures. And what I started to really think about was the whole streamer scene, the YouTubers, who the whole scene has its roots in kind of everyday people. Like when YouTube originally started, when the whole streaming thing or the vlogging thing started, it really wasn't anything that great or big. It was some Swedish guy in his living room with a mic and a crappy camera babbling about something. It really wasn't like the original the origin days of YouTube. They really weren't like PewDiePie, like we know PewDiePie today. The whole the roots and the origin is kind of in much more mundane, much more kind of a quote unquote original. But as YouTube as streaming has gone forward, as it has advanced, we have gotten into this realm where the YouTubers can be bigger than ever, sometimes even bigger than real celebrities these days, where the YouTube channels have become more and more produced to a point where these days you have actual production houses behind these YouTube celebrities when actual companies are trying their best to make YouTube content. And with that kind of advancement, with that kind of a shift, that the celebrities in YouTube, they have become even bigger, but they also have had to deal more and more with growing fandoms. And that also has included fandoms that have become more and more aggressive, more and more demanding. And it has actually created a real problem for these YouTubers, because once again, the whole main concept when they started to be YouTubers, they started as everyday ordinary people with no real training, with no real counseling on how you deal with fans, how you deal with fan demands and fan pressure. You all of a sudden just slowly became a huge name. Felix all of a sudden came a PewDiePie. And in that transition to become a PewDiePie, the everyday person Felix has all of a sudden had to deal with fans, coming to his door, coming to his apartment, breaking into his property. He has, at least if you take PewDiePie's word for it, he has had to move, like 2 or 3 times, because the fans have deciphered where he's living and they have been just bombarding his home. So we still have this element. We would like to think that with YouTube and with everybody now having camera and everybody pushing doing content, even two Finnish assholes like ourselves doing interviews and doing content, we are somehow leveling the playing field. We are kind of lessening this whole circle that goes around between someone who is famous and those who are fans of that famous person, but I'm not entirely certain if we are actually doing it. Like if we are really fixing the problem, or if the problem is being fixed. Perhaps the only thing that we are doing is we are taking it more. We are just taking more fans away from your Hollywood mega celebrities, and we are just kind of spreading them out to YouTube stars and your PewDiePie, so that George Clooney these days, he doesn't have as many trillions and millions and jillions of fans, because some of those have transferred to be PewDiePie fans.
Or the Flick Lab podcast fans.
Or the Flick Lab podcast fans. But the core problem, the dysfunctional fans still exist. And now, when previously it was just George Clooney's problem, now it's George Clooney's and PewDiePie's problem.
This is an interesting conundrum in the way that YouTube has brought the celebrities, I would say, more down to earth, or given them a more quotidian value, that everybody is now there to give Q&A sessions and live sessions and hey, hello, I'm here at my home and ask whatever you want type of a deal, which in some cases I guess would make it more mundane and make them more close to you, and like in a way that you would accept that these are also just people and they live kind of ordinary lives sometimes. But I can see where this would go with some weirdos who now are taking, kind of zooming into the pixels and checking out what they have on their bookshelves and tracking down some element there to find out their address or where they were last week and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that, unfortunately, I would say that is something that goes hand in hand with fame, with being a celebrity, because there is this element into a celebrity where the celebrity or the industry behind that celebrity, they are kind of a demanding love. Like that's the whole idea behind super fans. Like somebody who goes to every single Madonna concert. Nightwish has fans who follow the band whenever that band is on tour, goes from country to country, spends godless amounts of money on hotel rooms and plane tickets and concert tickets to see every single concert. That's kind of what these celebrities or the industry behind them is demanding. Like these kind of fans, they are a great fucking news for a band or a YouTuber. YouTubers especially demand this kind of a devotion, a certain type of love. You are supposed to follow them. You are supposed to smash the like button. You are supposed to subscribe. They all want that. And all of these are kind of acts of commitment to that idol, to the celebrity, to the one you are, to someone whose fan you are. But the thing here is that all this devotion, all this kind of love, that's essentially, in my opinion, what drives these people. What is essentially is about. It is about need to be loved. They want the fans to love them, and that love, like in all parasocial relationships, it's one-sided.
Yeah.
They want that you love them. But once again, because you never share space, you never share anything, you are going to love them, but they don't even know you exist. They don't love you back. And because there is this aspect, because the love is so one-sided, I think that's actually one of the reasons why it can get so goddamn toxic and so dangerous. Because in this one-sided love, the one doing the loving, the fan, and also the celebrity to an extent, they don't have to take the responsibility that kind of goes with love. Like if you are in real relationship,
Yeah.
You have to take responsibility. You have to be there for the good and the bad. You have to see the good and the ugly. But in parasocial relationship, this whole element of reality, it just isn't there. You get to pick and choose that the idol will always be perfect, and you are always supposed to love your idol through actions and through monetary means. Buy CDs, buy concert tickets, click like and subscribe. All these things. Go to the cons to have an autograph. All of this jazz.
Yeah, sometimes I think what would be the best for a musician. I don't think there's like a universal rule, but some artists take the stance that yeah, they want to be as close or like connect really with their fans, and they want to. They are kind of the social nature. They want to have a lot of fan events and talk in person with as many fans as possible and make them feel as good as possible, and just be there as a friend. And then there are the people who are kind of like Axl Rose, actually, who is a total hermit, basically from the public eye, minds his own business on his Malibu mansion, and is rarely connecting and out and about with the fan base. And I understand both of these sides. What I sometimes wonder is, what is the more effective way of communicating? Actually, is it something that makes people obsessed and bigger fans if they feel that the target of their fandom is more unreachable, and does it kind of devaluate the item of or the target of worship if you connect too much with your fans? Just something to tinker with.
Yeah, it's once again, I'm not any kind of authority on the subject matter.
Yeah, we don't have to.
The Flicklab being the biggest podcast on the podsphere, and Finland being the hotbed of all the hot podcast action. But I mean, this is kind of a deal that you and I, or at least we also have to at least think about every now and then, because as a podcast, we also are kind of a public entity, not really super famous, not big in any stretch of imagination, but we are still on the public sphere. Like, we push content to internet that is a public place, and that we do have listeners. I know that because our listeners have love to every now and then make the repeating point how I am the bad guy of the podcast and should be punched in the face. So somebody does listen to us, and we do have some followers. Not much, but we do have some, and as such, we do have a certain, well, we are not celebrities, but we do have a certain type of authority, kind of a status. Like, you and I, we talk about films in a film podcast, and to a listener that translates as that we are professionals, we have insight into movies, we know what we are talking about. You here you get opinions, reviews, ideas, and with all this us being on YouTube, us being on podcast process, us being on Spotify, or all that, there also kinda also exists the need to grow the listener base. I'm guessing that you worry about this more than I do, but when it comes to that, when it comes to being followed, when it comes to being listened to, I guess there on that realm, it would help you if it would help us if we would be some type of active and social and famous, highly followed, all those things. When it comes to kind of my side on doing this podcast, I do the flick lab mostly because I have a personal mission. They like those who have been listening for us for some time most likely have already picked up on the fact that I keep on yammering about people having to talk to each other and stopping to listen to each other and the value of their existing communication, how we need to have more and more communication. It's preachy, and I do that way too much. Apologies for that one, but that's kind of the reason why I do Flick Lab. To me, Flick Lab is more or less a tool to kind of to preach the message. And in that regard, I think perhaps for me it may serve better, or at least it's easier for me to be kind of the social hermit. That's also something that you very easily see if you, for example, follow a Facebook page, where one side of the duo is doing way more of Facebook and way more of connecting than the other side, me being the shit-eating heel here.
To be frank, I would like to concentrate more on doing this that we're doing now, and less on the constant stream of communicating that is expected from of everyone really nowadays. But yeah, talking of people that you might want to hit with a brick, not me personally, but if you got those feelings, it just might be that you're a musician and your manager is causing you problems. From where we get to the discussion point of capitalism and how it manipulates many sectors, the entertainment industry raping your soul, sort of even visually in the film when Mima repents while she gets fictionally raped in the scene.
Quite graphic scene to add that. Like this is supposed to be a movie that goes in the public showings. Like when it comes to there's a fictional film, The Double Bind, that is being shot in Perfect Blue, and that's the film that's going to be Mima's first real film role. That's how she's supposed to transition from pop idol to an actress. And since it is raised that apparently that film is being directed by, well, at least a relatively known director. Apparently that the scriptwriter of the film is some kind of a hotshot, well-known scriptwriter. So most likely that film is supposed to play in theaters, or at least semi-publicly on TV. And yet, when it comes to the rape scene that is being shot in the sets of Double Bind, there are two notions that raise up. The first one comes from, is it one of the cameramen who comments on the fact that they would like to shoot the rape scene in a real club, but the content is of such nature that no club would actually take the film production inside. And the second thing that you very clearly see is that the rape scene itself is extremely graphic. It includes upper body nudity. Like Mima, who still, remember this, is a transitioning pop idol, all of a sudden now has her breasts out on camera.
Yeah, taking advantage of her, basically.
So yeah, so when it comes to you mentioned rape, and even though yes, in Perfect Blue, it still is a film shoot. The actor, there's a precise moment where the actor who is supposed to be raping Mima's character even stops, and they halt the shoot for a moment, and during that moment the actor playing the rapist even apologizes, and Mima is like, it's okay, we are professional, let's go continue on. So that the film makes very strong point that it's not a real rape, but
Yeah,
even
yeah.
though still as a scene it is pretty damn rapey.
By the way, when it comes to graphic content, violence-wise, that kind of a bloody violence, you get a hell of a lot more of that in the novel compared to the much praised violent scene with the stabbing in the eye by the pizza guy and all that. But capitalism, yeah, even if this film is Satoshi Kon's hate mail towards what the film industry has become, it's not really a powerful argument if you think about capitalism's modus operandi on the whole, which is to make money in every sector. So capitalism, which denounces morality by default, and therein lies kind of the issue of any monetary system for me. Of course, there could be an economist on the podcast to explain it further, but this is my view. It's already been proven that capitalism is a bit of a pain by the virtue of the existence of these massive multinational corporations, where it's not really about the people at the top lacking morals, but that no one is at the controls. These are corporations that are so huge that the head has no idea what the tail is doing here. In a way, many of the brands that we know internationally, they are just that. They are brands with no kind of faces, key people in control of it. Of course, there are the CEOs and all that, but these machines are huge, and the brand is running on autopilot in that sense, powered by big masses of people. It's become faceless. So capitalism is good at mass producing inequality and rewarding psychopathic behavior. For example, these CEOs who might be kind of a pushy to get what they want sometimes. The more you disregard your humanity, I believe there is more to be gained monetary-wise in many cases. Maybe not always, but you get the gist. You kind of lose yourself so that you can gain more by pretension. The prime incentive of capitalism for me is iniquity. So you might counter that, Henrik, and say that statistically capitalism has actually reduced inequality. Well, yeah, what we used to have were more people below this absolute poverty line. But what we now have is less people below the absolute poverty line, yeah. And what I would say to that is that we also now have larger and larger portion who live in abundance. And in the world of excess, we can communicate with these bullshit machines over the internet, for example. This is not, even though Finland likes to think it's not something that we need to survive or keep our lives rolling. So it's kind of an accidental side product of technological advancements. We've accidentally pulled a higher percentage above the absolute poverty line here. So to say that capitalism is effective for reducing that inequality is a bit like saying, I used to walk, but I can move faster now thanks to my electric wheelchair after I broke both of my legs on purpose or something like this.
Yeah, and there also is this kind of a really dehumanizing meta side to capitalism. Like in order for the capitalism to truly work, it has to kind of adopt this mental state where it sees tools and it sees products. It sees ways to how somehow produce something. And this is kind of something and this is something that you see when you look at, well, like Perfect Blue is looking at film industry, or for example the whole pop industry that we have going on. The Perfect Blue's narrative begins with J-pop industry, and well, keeping with J-pop, even though this is not just J-pop's problem. It's also in K-pop and in Western pop music. But well, if we are to keep it on Perfect Blue's opening, there are these elements when it comes to J-pop industry that are actually pretty damn horrifying when you really stop to think about it. The whole industry itself is extremely regulated from the industry side when it comes to the actual performers, the J-pop idols. Like in these circles, if you are like Mima is a J-pop star, an idol, the industry can regulate your hobbies, it can regulate your dressing, it can regulate who you go out with. Your social life, like your personal relationships. You can't, for example, have a relationship with a wrong type of person. Your sex life can be regulated, and in a twisted way, to tie it once again back to fans and Axl Rose being fat and all of that. It's not just the industry, but it's also the fans.
I stumbled upon a video while doing this background research, I think on YouTube, where there was this J-pop idol who, in tears, said sorry to her audience that she had been seen outside with a male person in this way that just suggested that he would be her boyfriend, or it would be a date situation. For me, I didn't understand anything. I guess I need to delve more into the J-pop culture, but that being a problem in itself, it's horrifying.
Yeah, I may have stumbled on the same video or then different video.
Yeah.
This is not one of a kind incident, and the nasty side is that sometimes even this type of mistake, showing up with outside with the wrong person, it has cost J-pop stars their careers. It has led even in West, like with American pop stars, it has led into public backlashes from media and especially from the fans. And the industry, for example, in J and K-pop, has taken the safety measures to prevent this from happening to such an extremes that, if I'm understood correctly, the pop stars may be demanded to live in certain house. Like let's say that you have a boy band. The members of that boy band have to live in one house together. Like they are forced, they are demanded to coop up with each other, so that they wouldn't show up outside with a wrong person, so that they can, when they are inside, when they are quote unquote in their own home, they can be, in according to a schedule, be pumping out social media content. They may have timetables when they are allowed to leave the house, go outside like fucking regular normal people. That there may be regulations on how they have to dress, how they have to act with people.
And people wonder why boy bands always break up, or these kind of groups in general. And what is kind of as well disturbing is that when these people sometimes try to start up their solo careers, I think this is the situation with, for example, Henry Lau, who is a famous South Korean Canadian kind of a multi-talent pop musician, and he had major troubles starting his solo career because the producers weren't supportive of what he was trying to do. I believe they wanted to just see the guy back in the boy band, or whatever you call them in that part of the world, and so it took years and years and years of pain for him to get that started. So fans might see this kind of a solo pursuits as well in not such of a good light, they might say that this is wrong, this is not where you belong.
Yeah, and to remind everybody that this is not just an Asian problem, this is not just a J-pop problem.
Yeah.
This is also a problem that also happens in, for example, in professional, like show wrestling, the WWE shit. Also, does the exact same fucking thing. Like you in WWE world, you have fictional characters that these wrestlers portray, and there are good wrestlers and there are evil wrestlers. And for example, the good guys and the bad guys can't show up outside together because they have to. There is this whole concept called kayfabe, which is them having to keep there's a show going on all the time, and because of this, even if two wrestlers, a good guy and a bad guy, they may be friends in real world, but they can't be friends out in the public because that whole antagonist dynamic that they then portray when the show's on, that has to be protected, that's mandated on their goddamn career, on their contracts. And in for example, in J-pop, there exists kind of a twisted dynamic between the industry that makes the contracts and between the fandom. Like in J-pop scene, there is this term, and I'm not entirely certain if I pronounce this right, but chinitai, which roughly translates, as I've understood, as bodyguards. And this doesn't mean bodyguard in the sense that it's in the, like you jump and take a bullet for the person you are being hired to protect, but in the sense that these chinitais, these bodyguards, they are fans of some idol, and their job, the job that the industry, that the production houses wish that they do, is that they safeguard the image of the person they are fans of.
Yeah.
Like they buy the merchandise and they make fanzines and they post on net, and as they do this, they re-establish the made up personality of the star, and at the same time they defend that image or that construction from fans of some other star, if it's a pop trio, if necessary, against the fans of two other members of that same goddamn trio. And they also kind of enforce the producer's wishes and the producer's vision of how the star is supposed to be to the star itself. Because when the star goes online, he or she can read all these positive, fan posts. How good she looked in this dress, how well he behaved when in public, how they really like that he's now going out with this person, it's way better than the previous person, and the star kind of gets stuck into this loop that I have to appease the fans, so I have to continue acting in this certain way, and it's like,
Yeah.
it's two sides telling you how you should exist, and both sides can be making money or social credit on from your back. Like the production houses, they obviously get a cut of the profits, but well, like for example, Perfect Blue once again showed you that the fans also can have their own much more smaller but still a monetary market going on around the idols. Perfect Blue starts with the scene of with the fans outside of that some type of Power Rangers show stage play thing that is going on, and the fans, one of them is selling apparently some kind of a homemade fan magazine about the band, and there's a next group of fans who are talking about the extraordinary prices that some recording that exists has, like it's super expensive recording because it has one of the girls that it has Mima singing without the the other two members of Jam, so you get to hear her real voice, so it's really rare and therefore expensive. And there's also social credit that these fans can exchange. Somebody has that recording, somebody is making the fan magazines. So in fan circles, they can be seen as more valuable, kind of a higher, more hardcore fans, something that the other fans should also look upon.
Yeah, that's another tangent that you could take. That, for example, if these discs would be pressed only in 20,000 copies, they would be collector's items because of the artificial scarcity applied on them, and this gets way more nefarious when we are talking about life-saving products such as, well, vaccines would be the kind of a hot topic right now, or wells in Africa, or what have you. I have to point out that, of course, capitalism, it's still our best tool at combating inequality as far as I know, but we're all selling out thanks to this system that rewards pursuit of self-interest over the group interest, and sadly, self-interest here is not the same as group interest. Never mind these debates about whether to allow or ban prostitution. We are all prostitutes in this system.
We kind of are. That unfortunately kind of also includes the podcast in question.
Kind of. But yeah, there might be even more for me to tackle about the idol culture, fandom, otakuism, psychosis even in Millennium Actress. We are kind of deluded, Henrik. We are the consumers of cinema. We are also deluded. We seek for the perfect movie over and over and over again. But everything you see is more or less the same. It's kind of a loop, a wormhole. We never get exactly what we're craving for, I guess. Just like the reporter in this film. He's completely obsessed about this actress, Chiyoko, the ideal story told by his idol, but there's something about this endless chase that turns him on, even gets into creepy realities enough when she's a little girl, I've felt. But he's turned on and he's a bit jealous because he has self-deluded himself to the level of believing that I guess that he was the love of her life in some aspect, or maybe that's apart from not being the kind of stabby kind of fan like in Perfect Blue. Here also that the fandom reaches even perhaps creepier tones than in Perfect Blue, because he starts to believe that he's been part of her life in some kind of a meaningful capacity, and suddenly he seems to believe it. There's some humbleness about him, but one meeting in real life and he too wastes his life chasing a fake story and the enigma that she has become, this avatar, which once again is kind of in his head. Satoshi Kon is kind of doing the manipulation for the audience here. I want to kind of put a flag here that he might be doing that unknowingly, unconsciously, and it's just my interpretation of the film, and not necessarily at all even the creator's interpretation or intention.
To me personally, kind of perfect. I kind of saw Perfect Blue as the or Perfect Blue as the more sinister, the kind of more cynical approach to fandom. Millennium Actress, in my opinion, is the one that is more hopeful, more healthier version of, or more healthier look at fandoms, or it depicts more healthier fan.
Maybe healthier, but I don't know if it's healthy. We can discuss that, yeah.
I guess we have to, because I'm kind of on the opposite side on when it comes to Millennium Actress, where to me Perfect Blue is the cautionary tale of fan culture, of having a fan. Millennium Actress to me read as kind of the joyous, the hopeful, like this could be what having a fan could mean. To me, Millennium Actress is kind of an example of essentially, once again, parasocial relationship, but a parasocial relationship that ends up working, where it has a positive result and where it has benefits. Whereas Perfect Blue is once again, it shows how unhealthy, how dangerous, and how sick that relationship can get.
Speaking of Millennium Actress, so here we have as the centerpiece characters the hermit actress Chiyoko, and this a bit fanatic reporter, as well as his cameraman friend. Sort of the voice of reason in many scenes, kind of questioning what the hell is happening. And it's the first Satoshi Kon film which features Susumu Hirasawa, which Satoshi Kon was a longtime fan of as a composer. And I would say that the film has quite strong soundtrack. In Perfect Blue, the different scenes based on their coloring or what was going on was strongly tied to the music that was played during those moments. And here the composer is trying to communicate kind of the loop of life, something repeating. This goes a little bit into the history of Japan, presenting various references to Japanese history, Edo period, Manchukuo. They say that it's also the last major animated film which was created with hand-inked cells, because at this time most of the studios were going into digital direction. There's no book regarding Millennium Actress. This story is loosely based on the lives of two actresses from Japan, Setsuko Hara and Hideko Takamine. I feel that there's a lot of meaningless echoes in the film. This is already kind of hinted at 29:50. Quote, "You will burn forever in the flames of eternal love," uttered by this ghostly figure. And the key, what is the key about? Is it the key to somebody's heart? Why is this item important? I feel that it's not necessarily important at all. The film is about the love towards whatever you want to see in it, and the chase of that love, and love for the chase, as the closing lines give it to you outright. It's not about that Kon is unwilling to show you the way in, or resuscitate the way cinema in Japan was, but he wants to celebrate the feeling, that nostalgia, that the way these memories are made golden, as we say in Finland, an illusion made up by our minds, the sugarcoating of our past. So we're kind of overstating and justifying something in our brains often in this situation when we do this, that something that really wasn't impactful or meaningful maybe in any way. Our memories manipulate us to believe that they had some meaning. In the same way as I was studying some bullshit and I didn't feel that it had some value. But yeah, on the retrospect, my brain wants me to believe that it had some value. Yes, it had some value, but was it worth going through all those years of studying something that you're not feeling passionate about? No, but of course you've learned things on the way. Yeah, our memories manipulate us. It's the same way that Chiyoko, as the main character, has wasted her entire life, as far as I see it, for chasing this something that doesn't even exist, or perhaps never even coexisted as like love between the rebel and Chiyoko. She's chasing shadows of a man, of whose face she can barely see through the runtime, and also points out that she has forgotten the entire face. Also, this character seems promiscuous to me. There's a quote, "A man took all of Eiko's earnings, then he ran off with another woman," end quote. This could have been a reference to something else, but I took it as the reference to this guy. So, summa summarum for me, seems like the guy is a piece of trash. He is most likely even an art robber. Like, he never shows the painting to her that he's carrying. I took this as immediately as some kind of a guy who's running with some painting to sell it off somewhere, stolen from some art gallery.
On my end, I'm kinda on the opposite side of basically everything that you just said.
Mm-hmm.
To me, that dude was just a leftist artist. The painting belonged to him. I always took that the painting, even though, yes, it mysteriously, when you first see the artist, he's running away from the cops, he's carrying the painting is covered by the cloth, so you never see what the painting is. But I always took it that it was the painting that he made a huge fuss about, how it's unfinished and how he wants to finish it while freezing outside and dying of hypothermia. But more to the whole, did Chiyoko kind of a waste her life when she was chasing the artist. The whole Chiyoko and artist deal, once again, it's not exactly parasocial, but it is teetering into that direction. Like, what in the heart of Millennium Actress, in the heart of Chiyoko and the painter, there's a love story. Chiyoko, as a young girl, has a chance encounter with a mysterious painter who is running away from the cops. Chiyoko hides the painter for a short time, and they have a few exchanges. They share some talks during the time that the painter is hiding, and apparently during this time they all both become deeply affectionate with each other. At least the painter becomes the love of Chiyoko's life, etc. And
Okay.
Chiyoko spends the rest of her life desperately trying to re-find the painter, who, as it eventually turns out, has already been dead for quite some time, because the Japanese police torture and kill him in order to, make him or force him to turn over his leftist friends. So in that sense, yes, Chiyoko has wasted her life, but because of her chase, she has, in the end, an entire career as a well-known film actress. She does have, at least for a while, a marriage, which, okay, is not the marriage she originally wanted. It's kind of a marriage that eventually she accepted because she was getting old and apparently she was never gonna find the painter again, etc. But she still does have a life. Her life still, at least on some level, does have a meaning. She becomes something. And since you were asking about, yourself, like, did you waste your time? I'm not entirely certain if you did, even if you didn't feel passionate about what you were once studying, even if you are not in the profession at the moment, but you still picked up a ton of skills. You picked up something that you may even sometime in future still somehow put on use. You may have
Mm.
made connections, friendships that may carry even today. I don't know what your situation is or what resulted from it, but I'm not I am a bit hesitant to say that you necessarily have been wasting your time, as the same way I don't see that Chiyoko in Millennium Actress wasted her life.
Well, my brain certainly has convinced me that since I studied two fields related to media, that I now have a wider scope of the media spectrum in general, so I can easier kind of see the fuller picture of what's going on. But yeah, but regarding the film, it seems to me that this is suggesting that there's always something that keeps us going, which is again tying to our previous themes from Hugo. Something will keep us going, even if it's meaningless, and it will make you feel like you've wasted all your time on meaningless pursuits sometimes. And in that light, the key might represent nothing at all. It might not have meaning. I'm sure that this could be Satoshi Kon's just appreciation towards Japanese cinema and being a cutesy love story. It could just be that. But Satoshi Kon probably didn't mean it to appear in any of this way that I've made the case here. But what I get from the film is that she wasted her life indeed on meaningless pursuits, maybe had a career on the way, was a lot unhappy when trying to find this previous love. Even the marriage that she seems to be in is built on a lie from the beginning, where the husband and this older actress, seem to know something about this key and where it has been all these years. For me, there's no romance if you are wasting your life to the perfect ideals or wallowing in the past, for God's sakes. I've done my great share of that, and I have regrets that my life hasn't proceeded always like the perfect movie, and it never will. And I've only myself to blame to some parts of it. But it's better to keep on moving and don't get stuck in the past. There are some people who constantly want to reference the past, and I don't know to what end. The people of the past, they never see it in the same way as your brain sees it. You won't get back the same ideal world that you think you had, but you actually never had it. Say that you had a great experience camping somewhere, and it was an experience for you, but maybe it was a completely different experience for the other guy, and they've moved on. So we won't be boarding any space rocket here or go to the moon like it might be going in the film. You might even think you already boarded some kind of a space rocket, but it's kind of in your head. The avatar, the illusion of you might be playing a role there as well. You think you're something, and experiences differ.
But then again, when it comes to Millennium Actress, Chiyoko most definitely is something, and because of her chase, she ends up boarding a rocket. Okay, it's a space rocket on a film set, granted, but it's the next best thing. Like at the end, where she was originally going towards to was inheriting her mom's shop that sells something never established, and instead and through the whole chase for the love she never reached, she ended up ditching the mom's shop and having her own career, becoming her own person.
Yeah, and even that career was because of she was in love.
Yeah, so it may not have been entirely bad for her. Like once again, that love to me, that the love didn't read as her wasting her life and her just being stuck in the past and not being able to move forward.
Well,
She was, in a way, she never got over the painter, but in every other aspect, she did move forward. She moved forward from her mom and shop and became a celebrity who some documentary filmmaker decades later seeks out and wants to make a documentary of.
Yeah, the whole ending seemed to me very bittersweet, and it kind of ended on a sad note that she was looking for something, and in the end, it's not even about the original purpose. It's just some kind of a. It seems like the disc has been rolling long enough that now it's only about the chase aspect of it, and she never gets to know what happened to this guy who has been dead for a long time.
I, on the other hand, I took the ending as quite hopeful. Actually,
Oh,
I saw the road that she managed to walk despite all of it.
I saw that she came to accept that he wasn't coming probably ever back to her life by when she got to her 30s or 40s, and perhaps it was a lot of it was part of that she would not be entirely the same person or looking the same as he would then remember her as being, so it would be kind of a wasted effort and time to move on type of thing. She certainly seems to have moved on when she became the elderly interviewed person, but seemed to waste a hell of a lot of time.
Well, I guess it's this disagreement between the two of us that's gonna frame the second half of today's episode.
So for you, it's a heartfelt artistic film, and Satoshi
To
Kon.
me,
Yeah.
it's definitely is that.
Okay.
I would say it's more than Perfect Blue was. Not in the sense that Perfect Blue wouldn't be stemming from the heart, or Satoshi Kon's heart wouldn't be in the film. That's not what I mean. But Satoshi Kon obviously is extremely passionate and with full heart making both of these movies. But in its core, to me, Millennium Actress is kind of it's the light-hearted film, the film that leaves you with a good feeling, and the film that says to you that it's okay and it's gonna be okay, even with all the hurdles and the hardships. It's still okay, and you didn't waste your time in when you were studying, and keep on going forward. Life's beautiful, world is beautiful, there are beautiful things, even if you never really reach the destination. And at the end of your life, that's nothing more than you embarking the next chase into the next journey, as Chioko herself feels on her deathbed. And
That
Perfect Blue, on the other hand, is the film about, well, the industry is shit and people are horrible and you're gonna lose your mind, and yeah, well, it's kind of it's this dark-hearted, more nihilistic take on life, and also on whole celebrity thing. Like as I already said, to me, Millennium Actress is showcasing a working relationship between an idol and a fan. A relationship where, even though it started as one-sided, it led into some type of connection which was healthy and beneficial to both of them.
it could be. It's just this remains as a fact is that she gets to her deathbed, and then she seems to be the most content and happy that how things have evolved, and a lot is there to be thanked for the reporter for kind of bringing out maybe the demons of the past and kind of sorting it out on her head as she goes on with the story. But yeah, it's sad. Now she's content when she's dying.
Well, the part where I'm going to disagree with you on that is I took that she was contempt in before the deathbed scene also.
Yeah.
Like there are moments with her throughout the film where I took it that she was being genuinely content and genuinely happy.
Okay.
Like for example, all those LARPing sessions that she has with the documentary director.
Oh, that's quite fun, I have to admit. By the way, what was that Henrik talking about all that? Life is happy, and or was that the movie talking via Henrik?
Well, I'm still a Finn in my heart, so most definitely was the film talking.
Phew.
I'm like, don't worry, Karri. Once we stop today's session, I promise you I will get back to fixing.
There was a lot of material cutting involved in Hubo episode, just so you know.
Well, being the bad guy in the flick lab, it's hard but honest work. It's a 24/7 job.
What do you think about this? That Satoshi Kon wanted to embrace the unlimited possibilities of animation and hoped films like Millennium Actress would continue the trend, because the animation is complete freedom of the mind. Like, is it just a love letter to Japanese cinema? And do you think that actually Satoshi Kon's whole era, his films, are they all about love, Henrik?
I don't think they are all about love. It gets a bit tricky because today's films, Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress, well, they most definitely are love. In Millennium Actress, it's sweet, even though at times bittersweet, and in Perfect Blue, it's poisonous and tainted and disgusting. When it comes to Paprika, when it comes to Paranoia Agent, if we now count in Paranoia Agent, that being a TV series and not a film, I'm not entirely certain if they are about love.
Yeah.
I keep myself from making a statement, yay or nay. I'm not gonna make it today. When it comes to what Millennium Actress is, in my opinion, as you word out, it most definitely is a love letter to well, Japanese studio system and Japanese cinema. Definitely, it's also a love letter to Japanese animation. Seeing how painstakingly the film was done, how much Satoshi Kon demanded that the film is not done using computers. So on that regard, yes, it is a love letter. I also, with the risk of repeating myself, I also see Millennium Actress as a sister piece to Perfect Blue. Like like you mentioned already at the beginning of the episode, it's like the other side of the coin, the other side of fan.
Could this also be kind of a continuation statement from Perfect Blue, that Satoshi Kon values the past cinema and art of Japan on screen, but do you find any suggestion that this would be indeed a hate letter towards what the industry has become, or how the art is now?
Millennium Actress, in my opinion, no.
Yeah.
Like, if we want to see the hate letter, I would say Perfect Blue is that. I wouldn't say that Millennium Actress, in my opinion, it's not even a hate letter against the history of Japan, even though that history perhaps is the thing that Millennium Actress is the most critical of. It is shown that also the behind the scenes shenanigans. And in Millennium Actress, you are being shown kind of the more jealous, the more evil side of what happens, behind the scenes of a film production. But that usually is tied down only to, well, one, max two characters. There is the counter actress to Chiyoko, who, well, perhaps is the main antagonist of the film. The film doesn't really have a clear antagonist. It has two antagonistic characters or forces. That there is that cop character who keeps showing up a couple of times throughout the film. He is the evil of Japanese history. The cop who tortures left leaning thinkers and artists and gets them killed, who at the end of the film comes to Chiyoko to apologize for his actions before the war and the person he was. Not really truly an antagonist. And then there is Chiyoko's counter actress, who is kind of a more I don't like Chiyoko type of character in the film, but even she doesn't really do anything that big, except she steals that key at one point, that being the main villainous thing that you are being shown within the film itself. Everything else happens off camera, so to say. And if you wanna read it that way, if you wanna see him as an evil character, as a corrupt character, there's also the director who is being given the Chiyoko's key, and who then hides that said key into his bookshelf in order to, to have a happy marriage with Chiyoko or something like that. I didn't see him either as a really evil or bad character. To me, he appeared as someone who kind of wanted to take the key away so that Chiyoko could move past the painter and have this second best marriage.
Well, now that you paint it in that light, then it doesn't seem like such of a bad decision on the director's part.
Yeah, that of course still is my reading, and I can't say that I'm more right or correct than necessarily you in your reading.
Yeah, and
Don't take it as any kind of a word of gospel.
Yeah, don't take my words as any kind of gospel as well. I have to maybe correct something that I said prior about the painting. At least on the first date, the painting is not revealed, but the painting is somehow revealed. Is it just the product of Chiyoko's imagination? Then I would have to probably check the film for the third time, I guess, for that. But there is this painting where there's a figure in a snowy landscape. For Satoshi Kon, I guess the painting is about film. And there's even a quote from the director, quote, "Chiyo, directing films is very similar to painting. A painter paints the color he likes on his canvas." So something about the change of art going on here. Is it that there's this theory as well that by the end, the end quote, it's referring to the chase of art in a way.
In a way, I can see that reading. That was not what came to my mind, but there certainly is. You can see it that way, because also when it comes to art, when it comes to filmmaking, as I've had to find out the hard way, you start the project, whatever art you are making, you start the project. You have this image in your head, like this is what's gonna look like. This is how my film is gonna look like. This is how my painting or my sculpture is gonna be like. And you can see it very clearly in your mind. And then you start to do it, and everything goes to hell. Like nothing works. Especially in film or video games, where you have to pass your vision to another person, and you can't really like force that person to see what you have seen in your head. Like you start to describe it. This is how I see this shot. Like the light comes from that angle, the characters are here, and then the character turns and says the line here, and you can try to like storyboard it to hell and explain it in detail, but there's always gonna be the element that another person will have his or her own kind of a image in their head, how they see it, and it's never gonna be like one-on-one. There's always gonna be something that's gonna be lost on translation, and even if you would do it all by yourself, like you can do with painting or with canvas or with sculpture, you never actually can reach completely what you have been reaching for. So like Chioko is chasing the painter and never finds him, never reaches him, the best she is left with in Millennium Actress is small messages, an image of her as a younger woman, as a younger girl, painted on a wall of some building, or a letter that she finally gets. Those are just kind of breadcrumbs on a road, like highlighting points, but they never actually. The journey never ends. She never reaches what she's truly trying to chase, and that's also what happens with art projects. So sometimes you get closer, sometimes you are way off the mark. Sometimes you get these small wins, small successes where you really nail that one part. Like, goddamn, my mobile games 3D characters, they look exactly like I thought. And then you find out that the game mechanics does not work, and the puzzles you were thinking in your head you can't create, or you manage to create them, but turns out they are shit.
Yeah, great to see this kind of a Trom Lyle or here in the podcast, and I'm kind of into this kind of a weird shite, so I'd be happy to delve more deeply in the future in this kind of stuff, and I suppose by virtue of doing this episode we will return to Satoshi Kon later on.
Well, seeing how Satoshi Kon is one of the kind of iconized masters of anime, lost like
Yeah,
Einsteins of the form, I guess we someday have to.
I guess we could take another tangent to talk about how the death of the artist affects that iconizing Hubo and Satoshi Kon.
Perhaps, yeah. Perhaps also, because when it comes to Satoshi Kon, well, there is that manga book that he started, never finished, was later published by at least Dark Horse, called Opus, which also has become somewhat of a holy relic, at least some anime communities, because it's the final unfinished masterpiece of the Grand Master. So I would say at least in Opus you can see, well if not completely, at least some aspects of precisely this effect going on.
There's quite a lot of aspects that we could discuss about Satoshi Kon, and in the next one we will indeed kind of shine the light on that topic more. Would you like to go to quickies?
Well, certainly, why not?
Special mention for an actor or actress goes to...
Well, in my side, from the two films, my pick will go to Millennium Actress. It goes to main character Chioko's Japanese voice actor Fumiko Orikasa art.
Okay, the youngest one. I kind of enjoyed in Millennium Actress the warm and comforting and wise voice of what I believe to be is Miyoko Shochi, the old Chiyoko. I think it was great. And Perfect Blue, there are some convincing screams from many characters in the film. I feel like I'm almost there. Junko Iwao plays Mima in Perfect Blue, and that was good stuff. What resonated with you the most?
Well, in case it hasn't become already super obvious, it is the questions of fandom and fan culture and the whole idol industry that we have. Like that's the aspect that I've been most ranting and foaming my mouth off here today. And that to me it was the biggest point between these two films. It even led me once again to think even our own podcast and what it can mean.
Why are we actually watching Satoshi Kon tonight? Yeah, how did if you want to tell your relationship with how did you get into watching Satoshi Kon and why is it here now?
Well, if we start with why it's here now, well, I have a confession to make. Uh, following the last episode, which was Hellraiser, the recording session went to the fucking 3 a.m. and I had to wake up at 6
7 for me,
because of
yeah.
a snowy commercial shooting. So as a result of well, not the recording session, but basically everything that was going on in my life at the moment, I had a slight burnout, which led into me not being able to watch anything, like million hours of film, five artistic movies in preparation for the next episode. So I am cheapskating here. That the best I can. I propose to you that we watch only one movie. You made the case that we should watch two, and well, you were right. We got more talk when we watched both Millennium Actress and Perfect Blue, and we managed to get into the whole fandom conversation much more deeply, thanks to your recommendation and decision here. But that's essentially is the reason why we are watch just two movies, and why we didn't delve super deeply into Satoshi Kon as a director, as a person. Like, what was he about? What was Satoshi Kon trying to say through the entire body of his work? That's all on me.
Well,
And
I
me,
think
me, me being a goddamn weakling and not managed to pull my weight on the podcast.
well, I think we made exactly the right decision for this episode. Like that these are, as we have noticed, there's a lot that you can discuss around these films. I don't know how much we actually talked about these individual films here, more than we talked about everything around it. But I don't see the bad in that necessarily. This is good, the primer, and we will complete this in the next one with Satoshi Kon.
Yeah. To answer your second question, why Satoshi Kon? I kind of found Kon originally. This was before anime became like the thing that it is in Finland today. This was during the times when anime was kind of a breaking ground in Finland. Back in those days, we still had these small brick and mortar DVD stores. I was visiting one of those. I was actually browsing the hentai section when accidentally I also got into the artistic, more serious anime film department, and I don't know, like I never been able to understand why exactly did I pick up Perfect Blue from the shelf. The cover is not really that astonishing. in my opinion, it's actually pretty lame. The back cover description, what the film is all about, was kind of like, he's a pop idol wants to become actress. Didn't really work for me. I guess the DVD just happened to be cheap or something. It was kind of an accidental purchase on my end. And then I finally watched it and I was like, oh my god, this is actually really good. I wanna see more from this director, and following that line, I have slowly been buying and checking out, well, all of Kon's films and also the Paranoia Agent series. And I kind of have had this idea that it would be nice to talk about Kon in some episode, especially ever since he died 2010, and now is widely talked about as the lost masters. And we have this whole discussion how, well, we only have Miyazaki, and once Miyazaki is gone, it's all shit. All the masters are gone. So Satoshi Kon has kind of been a long time coming in a sense.
I finally got it, Henrik. We have to fake our death so we get more listeners.
And live stream it.
In one adjective, how would you describe these films? Or you can pick two for each, one for each if you want.
To me, well, I'm gonna go pick two. So for Perfect Blue, it is dark. It is definitely dark. And for Millennium Actress, it is hopeful.
What I have chosen for Perfect Blue is something that you can apply it to basically all of Satoshi Kon's films, but overlapped certainly. Millennium Actress, voluptuous, which it certainly is. And it was a bit frustrating for me. It will be less frustrating when you have watched it once.
It is, especially on the first watch, it can be a bit taxing.
Yeah.
Because the film's narrative kind of goes bonkers extremely fast.
Would you consider to watch these films ever again?
Most definitely yes. To me, Millennium Actress is the easier to watch because it's not so dark and so grim as I find Perfect Blue, but both of them on my end, I see them as quite actually anime masterpieces. I have to join the Satoshi Kon Bandcamp here and shill for Kon. But yeah, I will be checking these films out. Not necessarily immediately. May once again be like a year, maybe 2 years. But I kind of know that I will be seeing these again at some point, at some date.
At some date. I don't feel compelled to watch this right now, but later perhaps. It is very artistic and a lot of love has been put into these films. Do you think the films have any staying power legacy, which is kind of a stupid question because they already have that. But maybe from this moment onwards.
Well, that question is kind of pointless whenever we are dealing with a film that has a cult following or is building cult following.
Yeah, it's just like this has been staying quite powered for the last 20 years, these both films and his whole production, I would say. But this will be celebrated by the otakus out there as some of the finest of what anime has to offer. I personally, if you really want my honest view, I usually tend to gravitate towards actually even more fantastical films than these ones that are less focused on the human worlds, which in a way have less restrictions even. But yeah, definitely this will stay in the limelight.
And since you already mentioned the fact that the author's death usually help the proceedings, well, I have to agree with you on that notion. Satoshi Kon has already passed, and following his death, there was a surgence with the public coverage on these films and Satoshi Kon's life and work. And I do believe fact the fact that Satoshi Kon is no longer with us, it will also help these films to to have a legacy and to stay in the public light.
Did you get a feeling of having experienced movie magic? I suppose the obvious answer is yes.
Well, yeah.
Would you recommend Perfect Blue Millennium Actress?
I would most definitely. If I would have to say something more about the films, I do feel that Millennium Actress is the easier one to sit through.
Oh yeah.
Uh, it has it has that lighter tone. It's not as heavy film as a Perfect Blue, and because of that, it's easier to pop in. It's also a film that has more jokes in it. So when you want something a bit more casual to check out, uh, in that case, I would say Millennium Actress. I would recommend you saving Perfect Blue for those days when you feel like you can actually, sit through something that can be a bit taxing experience. So there's a lot of crime that goes into Perfect Blue. So perhaps if you're feeling like super melancholic, if you have an average finish day, maybe not check out Perfect Blue then. Just maybe wait for a sunny day before you pop it in. But most definitely, yeah, a recommendation from my end.
Yeah, and even though as I've been trying to frame Millennium Actress as also a kind of a harrowing story in a certain sense, I have to agree that of course Perfect Blue is the more twisted film here. And if you're an anime fan, yes, most definitely you will like Perfect Blue. If you're not, well, honestly, I don't know. Did I like the film personally? Yes. Yes, I did. But it's this kind of a fringe audience movie, perhaps. You have to have another level of liking cinema, I think, that you will enjoy it.
Since you mentioned being an anime fan, well, I guess we can ask the question: would these films make anyone into an anime fan?
Why not? If you are into seeing more than cutesy characters and anime nipples, then yeah.
Yeah, I on my end, I can see that perhaps Millennium Actress could have that effect. I'm not entirely certain with Perfect Blue. That may be a film that works well. That requires that you are a fan or are an anime fan, or at least you tolerate anime and you know what anime is. I don't see that perfect. I don't necessarily see Perfect Blue as any kind of a transitioning piece for anyone to get into anime.
There are those people who say that they just hate anime because it's just a personal feeling that they get from anime, that maybe there is something about the jerky movements of anime or how the backgrounds might be kind of not so animated or the expressions of the anime characters. What have you? Personally, I don't have this problem. Millennium Actress, it's kind of the same answer. Yes, I would recommend it. Millennium Actress is what I'd mainly recommend from Satoshi Kon's body of work. If I had to recommend something, then Millennium Actress is a good starting point. Henrik, you really know you're watching Perfect Blue and perhaps Millennium Actress when?
When finding your keys from some place, since you have obviously misplaced them, you drunken podcast host. All of a sudden leads into you hallucinating yourself dancing on top of the street lights and possibly stabbing someone in the dick.
Ooh. That shot, yeah, where this Mima avatar is jumping on top of the streetlights in this nightly scene. The most memorable shot for me, I would say, out of these. Well, you really know you're watching Perfect Blue and Millennium Actress when you're on an endless pursuit for love, which, when unmasked, is actually an all-consuming obsession. I bet you loved that simplification. Oh, anything else about his body of work? I guess we can touch on that on a later date.
I would actually save that discussion for a later episode.
Yeah, but definitely, if you're into this kind of things, check out the book. High recommendation. And it's been once again pleasure dissecting some crazy cinema here, Henrik. Any thoughts before the outro?
Not on my end. Thank you also to you, Karri, for once again sitting through one more episode.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you as well for introducing Satoshi Kon to me. So, in the next episode, we're going back to South Korea once again, looking at the career of Nahon Ching, the director of the Chaser thriller, The Yellow Sea, and what could it be, mainly considered as a horror, I suppose, is The Wailing.
So it's gonna be thrillers and horror.
Once again.
Oh boy.
Beyond that, we would like to invite you to continue very lively yet thoughtful and understanding discussions regarding the films that we have been talking about today with us online in our Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, social medias, and Twitter. And we'll hope, of course, that you will support our mission and rate us on Apple Podcasts. That actually helps. Thank you for joining us and see you in a fortnight.
Until then. I am the bad guy of the podcast.